Well, good day, folks. This is Eric Rollins, the Constitutionalist, coming to you right from the podcast layer, joined by my producer, Philville.
Hey, Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. First thing I want to say, before I get into the meat of the show, is it's truly unfortunate, and I kind of think ICE was set up that a woman was killed. If you look at various angles of the video, she was trying to run an ICE officer down. Now, I feel bad, but it seems like, you don't listen to law enforcement, there's a problem. Here's why I want to address this and why I think it's a big deal. The gibbering fool Tim Walz, also the mayor of Minneapolis, so both of those gentlemen, they're running around talking about how ICE is basically evil. And so are a lot of other Democrats. So they're painting with a broad brush about one incident, rather than looking at one incident. So they're endangering the lives of law enforcement in general. And so I would ask that we all slow down for a minute and realize that most law enforcement is not just good, but great. Most law enforcement is what allows you to have a reasonable life in your community. And they've decided to serve. It's a tough job where they put their lives in danger, and we need to remain both respectful and thankful for that service that they provide. Switching gears. So you see a police officer, you see an ICE officer even. You probably shouldn't walk up and thank them if you're an illegal. But everybody else should walk up and thank them because they're trying to preserve our country. Switching gears.
Yeah, okay.
Venezuela. What in the world's going on there? And you're hearing a lot of people say, oh, it's all about this. It's all about this. No, it's this. No, it's this. No, it's this. Well, there's a bunch of stuff going on. There's narco-terrorists. They're, by meaning drug runners. It's a hub for illicit activity. You've got an illegitimate government. You've got Dominion and Smartmatic. Those voting machines, they came out of, guess what? Venezuela. You've got gold mining, both legal and illegal. You've got oil and all the problems that come with oil. And everybody says it's all about oil. That's certainly a major factor. Largest oil reserves on the planet. Something like 300 billion barrels. But it's not as simple as that. They've decided that they're willing to smuggle oil for both Russia and Iran, and they've been caught. Recently caught a Russian ship claiming that it was Venezuelan oil. And we seized the ship. So you've got Iran's got interest there. We've got interest there, and it's right in our backyard. Russia, they've got interest there, trying to sneak something in. Plus, they just love spreading around that communism. I get they're not technically a communist state anymore, but spreading around that communism. You've got China, who has something like $25 billion invested in Venezuela to get their mineral rights, things like that. You've got immigration. You realize that something like 8 million people have left Venezuela in the last few years? That the economy truly crashed in 2020. And in 2020, it dropped to about $4,000 per person, like the average income. And it stayed at that level, or almost exactly at that level. Now we're in 2026. So there was some inflation there, just like there was some here, meaning even if it went up 20%, things aren't quite right. You've got the fact that Venezuela, because Russia's broke, busy, and spending all its money and time in Ukraine, you've got now Venezuela that stepped up to support other dictatorships like Cuba and Nicaragua. You've got some connection to banking because you have to. I mentioned gold. Well, some of that gold's being mined without reporting what they're finding. In other words, it's black market gold. And so they're using that to help wash drug money. There's obviously got to be bankers to wash some drug money too, which feeds into this whole big globalist cycle. They're washing dirty money. It's a mess. It's like this interconnected web rather than it's this one thing. And there's a bunch of aspects to it. Or you might think of it as, instead of an interconnected web, what about there's layers? It's like it's one big giant ogre, if you're a Shrek fan. The thing about ogres is they have layers. They're like onions. Well, we're like Venezuela's like an onion that's going to make you cry, or an ogre that's going to make you cry because they stink. So what do we do with this big interconnected web? A web that connects oil, money, power, drugs, banking, and 4 major countries. Iran is not as powerful because they're really teetering right now, but they are a power in the Middle East. So they're a power in a key place. And they control a bunch of oil. China, I don't even think I have to explain why China. They're the manufacturers of the world. Let's hope we fix that, because they're corrupt and their people have literally 0 free speech. The concept of a Second Amendment right doesn't exist. It's much like our left here. They don't want to get rid of all guns. They just want people to not have guns, but they still want cops to be able to show up with guns. Well, China took care of that problem. People aren't allowed to have guns. But strangely enough, with that combo of no free speech and the people have no weapons or no way to protect themselves, why? There's no liberty. I don't know why my friends on the left, I think it's because they're embracing the warmth of socialism.
Hey, watch out.
So with this interconnected web, we begin to look at it. So if we were to look at, this is essentially global powers colliding. And a lot of those old world global powers, WMF, World Monetary Fund, Klaus Schwab, BlackRock, they're totally aware of all this. And they're willing to wash a lot of this dirty money. So a lot of their power comes from the fact that they control money. They're okay with no free speech because all they care about is money. They're okay with you not being able to defend yourself or your family. They're okay with you owning nothing and being happy. Why, that's a quote from Klaus Schwab. So is it okay that I would contend that Venezuela was not a friend of freedom? Why the UN condemned them and said that their elections weren't legal, that Maduro was not the legitimate leader. Strangely enough, Trump left in the socialist, one of the number 4 people or number 5 people. And so a woman has taken over that was part of the Maduro government, part of that dictatorship, and she's currently running the country. Now, we'll see how long that lasts. But if all of these are competing interests, why are we allowing people that are not our friends? Venezuela's not our friend. Probably still isn't as long as it's run by a socialist government. China's not our friend. Russia's not our friend. And Iran is unquestionably not our friend. Well, they're all there because they want the money, the oil, the resources, the gold, the minerals, and other metals that are being mined. It's an exceedingly rich area. It's so exceedingly rich that at one point, Venezuela was the richest country in South America.
Yeah.
By far. So they've got a ton of natural resources, and we're allowing our enemies, and by the way, socialist/communist, because I think that socialism is a small step away from communism, to exist right on our front step. So I'm glad that Trump decided, well, wait a minute, we can't do this. This is not a good idea. how can we have people that are antithetical to freedom? People that don't believe in freedom, that believe in the warm embrace of socialism and government control of your life. Well, how can we have that? If we allow that, it endangers our freedom. So I think he actually did them a favor. And wow, the left here in the United States absolutely disagrees with him, vehemently disagrees. I watched within 24 hours, there were a bunch of protests. Strangely enough, there were several signs that were exactly the same all across the country. So somebody's coordinating this, but there were protests saying free Maduro. So our left, you know, the people here that are embracing the idea of socialism, or they'd say democratic socialism, which is different, you know, because socialism, as long as you rebrand it and different people do it, it's a new idea that works. I can tell you're kind of chomping at the bit there, Phil.
Oh no, I was just gonna say a joke. I'm 5'6". No wait, I'm 6'4". I almost say I'm 6'4". But
well, in with the left, you can identify as anything you want.
Yeah,
reality doesn't matter.
I love the names reality. Yeah, exactly.
Of course, I've completely lost my place.
Sorry, I stuck in a joke there. Okay, let me ask you. So, do you support or oppose the decision then? So, it was a military operation to just capture Maduro, or is it a place where maybe possibly temporary U.S. kind of overreach a little bit?
While I think that time will tell whether it was an overreach, there's precedent for this.
Yeah, it is.
We've done this in Grenada. Why we did this in Iraq? I'm sure we can find other places with other presidents. There is precedent for regime change, and I want to point out that our left, mad that we're not releasing Maduro, we need to let the dictator go because Trump's a dictator.
Yeah.
What if we took a look at the Venezuelan people? And I'm not talking about the ones here. The ones here are like, oh, thank you. They are absolutely thankful to Trump that that dictator's gone. But what about the people that had to live under his rule? There's celebrations everywhere.
They're happy. They're crying. They're having church services on the street. Thousands. Man, it brought tears in my eye. I'm in the yellow zone, I think, on this. But I'm for their happiness. I'm glad for that.
Well, the left here has a track record of BSing. So I have, thank you to the Liberal Hive Mind. It's a podcast. I recommend you look it up. It's one that I rather enjoy. Does a great job. And he found a compilation of Democrats speaking about Venezuela and what we should do in Venezuela, mostly during the first Trump administration, so 45, up to early 47. And let's take a look at what they had to say, because I think it's really illuminating.
So he'd never do it. And of course, the Democrats have been pushing this same stuff for the last 8 years.
He brags about all these things he wants to do or is doing, but his actions belie his words. Maybe the best metaphor was his claim to bring democracy to Venezuela. There was a big policy there. It flopped. And the president brags about his Venezuela policy? Give us a break. He hasn't brought an end to the Maduro regime. The Maduro regime is more powerful today and more entrenched today than it was when the president began.
That was in 2020, and that was Chuck Schumer telling us how we needed to go in and do something about Venezuela.
Past decade, Nicolás
Now we've
Maduro,
moved to 2024.
the brutal dictator of Venezuela, has presided over a stunning collapse of the Venezuelan economy that has caused nearly 8 million Venezuelans to leave that country, most of which destined for the United States. Part of the reason why we saw 10,000 people showing up at the border every day last year, a number that the United States just can't handle with current resources because of the meltdown of the Venezuelan economy.
And Maduro lost. He is trying to cling on to this claim of legitimacy that he won when all the evidence shows otherwise. This is why the United States is now going to use its levers and influence to push for a negotiation, to have a transition to the truly elected leader Gonzalez. Obviously, we know Maduro and his cronies do not want to go quietly into the night, but the United States needs to work with our partners and allies in the region to ratchet up the pressure on behalf of the Venezuelan people.
Just look at what's going on in Venezuela. Maduro is what Donald Trump wants to be. He wants to be the kind of guy that it doesn't matter whether you win or lose, you get to stay in power. Doesn't matter if you win or lose. And Maduro is staying in power by blowing up the rule of law in Venezuela and co-opting the military for his political purposes. That's what Donald Trump is capable of, and that is not American. That is not American in any shape or form.
That was the rhetoric then, and now listen to them. It's unreal. You know, Donald Trump basically...
So, did you notice the left wanted him to do something? They absolutely said that Maduro was not the legitimate leader. Chuck Schumer basically was poking Trump going, well, you didn't do anything here. So now we've got this $25 million indictment for the narco-terrorist, former illegitimate dictator leader of Venezuela. And Trump goes in and actually does something.
Yeah.
And he did it in a way that was really amazing. We had one helicopter take some shots. We didn't lose any lives. And he got 5 of the 9 people that are on their list that they want to get. They didn't get them all. And when given grief about that, let's think about this. He got the head of the snake and then stepped back. Well, he doesn't necessarily have to go in and get every one of them. Once you take the head off the snake, all of a sudden they're going to be looking to cut a deal because they realized we went in and extracted him without even losing anybody. It showed that while Obama talked about, this is the new normal for the economy and we're declining power, we're no longer a Christian nation, and America's on decline. Obama said that a lot because I believe he's anti-American. That's President Obama, just so everybody's clear. Mm-hmm. It showed that, no, at least militarily, we're still a world power. And by going in and disrupting this group of nations that don't like us and changing the narrative there, we're realigning. You might think of almost like during World War II, there was the Axis and the Allies. Well, the Axis was Germany, Italy, Japan, and often referred to by people that love freedom, the axis of evil, because they were all dictators of various flavors. And then the Allies were basically countries that loved freedom. Now, I'd love to think that he is essentially creating that dynamic once again, that he is realigning people. Now, I hope that Europe joins that, but all indications are that Europe is, at least the current leadership, most of it, is pretty darn weak and is quite willing to arrest you for saying a naughty thing on X or whatever your social media of choice is. That they don't want freedom of speech, freedom of choice, freedom of thought.
You can't even pray on the street without being arrested.
No, because it might offend somebody. Yeah. But that's in England. But I want to point out that parks get taken over. Whole parks, whole areas of parks, small parks. And there'll be 200 people and they're praying to a different religion and it's just fine. Or they take out their rug, and they pray toward Mecca, and that's okay. England has lost its mind. Germany's largely lost its mind. France is weak. Luckily, there are some countries, Viktor Orban out of Hungary, Poland's looking pretty strong. Strangely enough, Eastern Europe is embracing freedom, and Western Europe, that had it, wants authoritarianism, wants government control. So I hope that at least Eastern Europe will be our ally, and I hope that Western Europe finds a way, because it's pretty difficult to get your own head up your rectum, but they'll find a way to remove their heads from their rectums, give up all the woke stuff, and embrace freedom and capitalism once again. I don't know if that's going to happen, but I sure hope so.
Well, what do you think is, I love that Trump just admitted it. The war for oil, I guess. And Biden, even, did we forget Biden allowed Chevron to have oil production in Venezuela in 2023. So they're trying to call something against Trump, which they're hypocrites.
Well, who do you think set up the $25 million reward for the arrest of Maduro? That wasn't Trump 45. That was Sleepy Joe.
It was Autopin.
Yeah, and Autopin did it.
Yes.
And but we can't get facts get in the way of our feelings.
Yeah.
Because then we wouldn't be good leftists. So, oil in a lot of ways it's because electricity or energy controls the world. So there's not just a realignment and access or an ally, and I'm hoping Trump's breeding allies. The left would say because he's evil, he's trying to create an evil axis. I think that he's trying to create allies. Yeah. It's not just that we realign around freedom, but we're also, this is forcing a realignment around energy. Now we've got an energy hub. It used to be that OPEC largely controlled things, but like they had the majority of the oil because we were not allowed to produce it here. And we do use more of it. I would say to good purpose, mostly. Well, this breaks that monopoly. How many times have we gone to some war or skirmish in the Middle East, and they always say it's not about oil? Do you completely believe that? Oil's always a huge part of the equation.
Yeah. We can't have, I don't think we should have China, on our side of the hemisphere getting oil.
Yeah. Well, especially that's on that's our front porch.
If there's conflict in the future, which it could be, likely maybe, some say, but they will be loading up. They can't be right there, just across a little part of the Gulf and the peninsula. What do they call it? The Gulf of America. Yeah.
So only peninsula in that area would be either Florida or the Yucatan.
Okay. Yeah.
But they're both kind of in that region.
I didn't study geography. Just kidding.
They're almost the same.
Yes. But, a question here. Question is, so there's some on the right, I've heard arguments, is this classic nation building or imperialism disguised as liberation? I mean, some of the right, I'm probably somewhere in the middle. America first should mean fixing our own borders, cities, not occupying foreign countries, etc. You heard all the arguments, but I feel like for me, this is not necessarily a neocon.
No.
This is different.
This is different. They're going to say it's imperialism. Essentially, what imperialism means is you want the power of your country or your organization, because the globalist, it's organization rather than a particular country, to extend beyond borders. Well, you have to do that to survive to some extent. But if your enemies are running a bad enough operation that Autopin decided to make a $25 million reward for the capture of this terrorist, and the people of Venezuela are thrilled, I don't see how that's imperialism. Now, we still have some time. What will the Trump administration do and basically moving them towards governing themselves and having legitimate elections? Okay, we don't know the answer to that. I'm generally hopeful and I'm believing that the best will happen, but we don't have the proof on that one.
We do need a plan, but I do worry about when there is like an AOC type in the future.
We have one now. I've heard her gibber this morning.
But in the Oval Office, I mean,
that's
10
a
years,
scary thought.
15, 20 years from now, we have a leftist or liberal again. What is the results? If the empire mentality or what the power of the presidency could do with regime change. What's going to happen with them? I don't know. So wait and see.
You can't not do the right thing because somebody else might abuse it. You have to try to do what you believe is the right thing with the rights we have, with the powers we have, and hope, and more importantly, pray that people will continue to do the right thing. That's why it's so important not to necessarily look towards Trump and one leader to fix it all, but instead fix yourself. So now that you fixed yourself, you can influence your family. Once you can influence your family, you begin to influence your community. And out of that community, out of that building of leadership, I believe that we can begin to elect people that are moral, godly, and want responsible, limited government. So there's this education part, there's this religious part, there's this moral part. We have a republic, and the reason they thought we could make it was because that we were moral and religious, and that that politicians were to think of themselves as citizens. We've largely forgotten that. And that those people that stepped up during the Revolutionary War, those founding fathers, they didn't do it to be rulers forever. They did it because they believed in these religious underpinnings that made for things like agency, free will, that talked about all the morality that would be needed, so that because man is flawed, and they're still going to screw up, but man is flawed. With those elements, though, we had a chance at creating something special, and I would venture that we did. And that we can continue that, but we have to get back to first principles. Get back to God. Get back to morality. Get back to community.
Amen.
And get to work, because with all these blessings, somebody has to step up and lead, but they should do it from a place of maybe a little bit of humility where they're serving, rather than like the most TikTok influencers. Me.
Mm-hmm. Well, Trump is the most humble. He says it himself.
Well, when somebody tells you they're humble, you know it's true.
Yeah, so... Hey, go ahead. I want to digress. Go ahead. Continue.
So I see lasting change coming from this, starting from the bottom, but I see that leadership from the top creates opportunities. It buys us time. It gives us moments of hope that hopefully inspire others. Now, if you're a regular listening to my show, you know that I bring in young people on a regular basis that are doing things that are trying to make a difference. That's not an accident. I'm trying to make them stronger. I'm trying to get them comfortable talking about ideas and issues. And I brought on some absolutely incredible young men and women doing just that. So there is hope. There is a generation that wants to make a difference. So where does that leave us with this whole mess with Venezuela? Well, part of it is time will tell. We don't know how it's all going to work out, because really all we can do is choose our reaction to what happens.
Yeah. Watch out, though. Greenland, Cuba, I mean, they're talking about that. So we'll see if it just stops here or continues.
Well, but is it imperialism if the people of Greenland vote to join the U.S.?
Great question.
I mean, because they've already...
Did they?
Yeah, they've already done that twice.
Ooh, okay.
What about Canada?
Oh, Canada.
We've got all those provinces, particularly Alberta, leading the way, going, we don't want to be part of Canada anymore. That the referendum is not all done and a done deal yet, but the way their confederation is written, provinces could leave.
Yeah.
It's not quite as... They wrote a different constitution than what we have in the United States. when we had a bunch of states try to leave over slavery, and some people will say it's over states' rights. I would say, just like the Venezuela issue, there's some key things, but it's this intertangled web. There's layers to that problem. Well, we've proven that states can't leave the United States. Thank goodness, because Newsom probably would have tried to peel us off of the rest of normal America if he'd had a choice. Because then he could get away with his corruption, and then he could hide it by printing money. States can't print money. That's Newsom's probably... It's the greatest thing that saved us, and the one thing that I think he desperately wants is ultimate power. Now, if you look close and you see him in a mirror, have you noticed his horns?
Anyways, I was going to say, I said that to my mother-in-law. Your horns are getting smaller. Anyways, just kidding. No, I love my mother-in-law. But so what is the difference then when we say Russia bad because they invaded Ukraine and they're just looking out for their interests?
If they stopped at the 2 provinces that speak Russian that wanted to secede, I don't know how you deal with that, okay? Yeah. But I wouldn't have a huge problem. Yeah. They didn't stop there. They want to take all of Ukraine. And most of Ukraine speaks a different language and wants no part of being Russian. But there is 2 little regions where, then this is where this all started before it got bigger, before people started going, well, you can't tell me what to do.
Yeah.
That pretty much want to be Russian because they're ethnically Russian. They speak Russian. I don't know. What do you do when you have a country and you want to split off and you have legitimate reasons? I wish I had good answers. In the case of Venezuela, though, even the UN, and I'm not a huge fan of the UN, did not see him as the legitimate leader of Venezuela.
Yeah, I'm with you.
And at the same time, we had, from the left, we had an auto pin signature that said you get 25 million if you go get him. So I don't know that everything's always really clear, and there's precedent on this. So I saw it as we went in, and if we wanted to extract all those people, and we went into a military base, large airfield, and extracted Maduro, we could have killed an infinite number of millions of people. I think there was enough firepower that we could have, if they didn't die directly, they would have died soon from starvation. If our whole goal was to destroy. Our whole goal was to extract somebody. So we used restraint.
Yeah.
Essentially, the good part of that is less people died, but also we showed our strength. And the more you show how advanced you are with your strength, we have this amazing technology when it comes to the military, the less likely it is your opponents are going to mess with you.
Yeah, you can't. Trump means what he says, but he throws curveballs and those threats. If you do this, he warned them.
Well, it's peace through strength.
Yep.
You end up with peace because you show strength in limited ways.
Yeah.
And it hopefully will keep you from having to be in a whole ton of skirmishes, fights, and eventually wars.
Yeah, remember Iraq War was 50,000 troops went. Mm-hmm. We didn't have that this time. He just went straight for the head of the snake, right? That's what you said.
Yep, he went for the head of the snake. I'm going to shift gears because I don't know what to do with Venezuela, and time will tell, but I'm hopeful for their people. I am enthusiastically looking at this going, wow, this is a game changer, and it really has the potential to be great. I have friends that are first-generation Americans from Venezuela, and the one of them I talked to the other day, and then I met briefly, was they were walking. They were so excited that I'm not sure their feet ever touched the ground. It was like they were floating. It was really cool to see how much hope they had. Another place where I think there's hope for California, not just the nation, because as California goes, so goes the nation. That's the saying, and I think in a lot of ways that's true, because largest population of any state, largest economy of any state, most manufacturing.
Culture.
Yep. Often bad culture, but culture. Yep. Something we could change in California. We don't have voter ID. So as long as you know the name of a voter and you got there before that voter, guess what? You could go vote for them. And they can't ask ID. So it could say Sam Smith and...
You listen to who? Go ahead. You don't know who Sam Smith is?
I don't know who Sam Smith is.
Okay. He's a leftist liberal.
Is that Bad Bunny?
No, they're in the same thing.
Okay.
Same category.
I was making up a name.
He's Cochino. Go ahead.
Sure. So you could be a man and go in and vote under an Asian woman's name or anything else because they're not allowed to look. Jimmy Carter was on a presidential commission. This was after he was president. And he said one of the greatest threats to our republic and to our voting system is the lack of voter ID and universal mail-in balloting. Why? California has both. What problems could happen? I want to fix that. And we are lucky that we have an assemblyman named Carl DeMaio that is leading a movement called Reform California. And we got a little bit more time to get in a few more signatures to put voter ID on the ballot. This would not fix the problem because we would still have mail-in ballots. It would fix a large portion. It limits the possibilities or the ways that it makes it harder to cheat, in effect.
Plugs one of the holes.
It plugs one of the holes. Actually plugs three of the holes.
Oh, okay.
Because it's voter ID. Mm-hmm. It requires register of voters. So every county has either a county clerk or a register of voter. If there's a register of voter, then the county clerk doesn't do this job. And that job is to clean the rolls.
Oh, yeah.
So people move away. That's the number one reason. So they no longer live in that district. Now they'd be voting in a different district, but a ballot still goes to that address.
Dead people really die.
Yeah. I have friends that have had ballots show up after relatives have been dead for 10 or 15 years, and it comes to their address.
Really?
Even though that person never lived at that address. Yeah.
Funky
things are happening.
Mm-hmm.
So, have to clean the rolls. You have to prove citizenship, and it will be tied to a particular ID, and then that ID will be the ID that you use when you go to vote.
Yeah. Wow.
So there would be a little bit of inconvenience when we all go through and prove that we're citizenship or have our citizens. Nobody knows my real name at this point. I'm still Eric Rollins.
Man, you know, just side note, it would make our late friend Sean happy right now.
It would, because he was absolutely, I think about Sean regularly, and he was completely for voter integrity. And there's a lot of warriors that have gone through this movement, and some have passed. And so I hope you take a minute and be thankful for the differences they made. He was a hero. The United States is still full of heroes. And to me, Trump is one of those heroes. I know the left is going to say I'm nuts. He's somebody bold enough and strong enough. But instead of me relying on Trump, I'm involved in my local government. I'm going out trying to hold him accountable. I'm trying to make this a more informed society that will make better choices. Thank you, God. God bless. This is Eric Rollins, the Constitutionalist. See you next week. I had a good friend of mine who's pretty agnostic.